In November, the conflict between Hamas and Israel continues. Since October 2023, the Israel-Hamas war has persisted, and Beijing has consistently refused to condemn Hamas's attacks. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning pointed out that the root cause of the Israel-Palestine conflict lies in Israel's continuous encroachment on Palestinian territory and the persecution of the Palestinian people. On October 14, 2023, Foreign Minister Wang Yi stated that Israel's actions in the conflict have surpassed the scope of self-defense and should cease the collective punishment of Gaza Strip residents. Many mainland Chinese media outlets have criticized Israel for killing innocent civilians in Gaza, indicating China's alignment with the Hamas camp. The CCP's stance has drawn criticism from Israel.
Some scholars and media outlets speculate about the CCP's underlying motives. Replacing the U.S. as the Middle East coordinator, the CCP might hope that continuous terrorism and chaos will allow it to replace the U.S. as the key coordinator in the Middle East. Diverting attention from Xinjiang, the conflict might be advantageous for diverting global attention away from the CCP's persecution of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. Disrupting Western nations, scholars believe that conflicts in the Middle East and the Russia-Ukraine conflict can disrupt Western countries, consuming the resources of democratic nations. The recent killing of Israeli civilians by Hamas is undoubtedly an act of terrorism. Why the CCP supports terrorism? In the chapter on terrorism in The Devil is Ruling Our World, it is argued that terrorism has deep roots in communism. Behind many terrorist acts are the conspiracies of the Communist Party and the shadows of communist ideology. The book The Ultimate Goal of Communism systematically analyzes and reveals the communist evil spirit intending to destroy humanity through the destruction of culture and the corruption of morality. In other words, the ultimate goals of communism and terrorism are to destroy humanity. The CCP's support for terrorism has a decades-long history. Yasser Arafat, recognized by the U.S. as a famous terrorist and the forerunner of modern terrorism alongside Osama bin Laden, received early approval and support from the CCP. Terrorist incidents can successfully divert people's attention. Some scholars believe that the current Hamas-Israel conflict can divert attention from the CCP's persecution of Uyghur Muslims and more. Currently, led by the United States, democratic nations are uniting to economically decouple from the CCP and join forces militarily to counter it. This seems to signal a return to the global two-camp structure reminiscent of the Cold War, posing a threat to the CCP's regime, which urgently needs to break through this encirclement. The CCP needs terrorist activities to shift the international community's attention away from its confrontation. Before the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2001, the international community was preparing to sanction the CCP due to its brutal human rights and religious persecution. Just as Western democracies were preparing to sanction the CCP, terrorists orchestrated the 9/11 events, leading the U.S. into long-term counter-terrorism efforts, leaving little attention for China's human rights and religious persecution issues. After 9/11, 2 Chinese military personnel were hailed as heroes for their 1999 publication of Unrestricted Warfare, mentioning the challenges the U.S. would face if the World Trade Center in New York were attacked. They explicitly mentioned that bin Laden has the ability to use his terrorist group to organize this attack. It can be said that the CCP's unrestricted warfare theory guided the development of terrorist attacks, with bin Laden putting it into practice. The Ukraine war and the current Hamas-Israel conflict will consume significant financial and material resources from democratic societies like the United States, weakening their anti-communist efforts and providing the CCP with some breathing room. In major issues, China, Hamas, and others often stand together because their ideologies are similar. The CCP doesn't choose allies in light of interests and sentiment. From an economic perspective, there is substantial trade and investment between China and Israel, while China's investment and trade with Palestine are less than 1% of that with Israel. In 2022, the bilateral trade volume between China and Israel was $25.5 billion, with China's exports at $16.5 billion and imports at $9 billion. In the same year, China-Palestine bilateral trade was $158 million, with exports of $158 million, a 23.5% increase, and imports of $19,000, a 94.3% decrease.
China and Israel not only engage in trade but also have significant investments in each other. Israel, as the world's second-largest high-tech center after Silicon Valley, has transferred high-tech technologies, including cutting-edge military technology, to China for years. The drones used by Hamas in attacks on Israel, labeled as Iranian-made, are likely manufactured using Israeli technology by the CCP.
The CCP's regime doesn't prioritize economic interests. Economic growth is just a means to maintain its power. Its goal is to export communist ideology worldwide, defeat democratic nations globally, and establish dictatorship.
Additionally, the long-term partnership between Israelis and the CCP has other reasons. During World War II, Dr. Feng Shanho, the former consul general of the Republic of China in Vienna, used his position to issue visas to Jewish people persecuted by Nazi Germany, allowing thousands to escape and survive. His heroic actions earned him the title China's Schindler. Descendants of those saved by him feel indebted to the Chinese people and wish to repay the favor.
However, the CCP won't express gratitude to the United States for helping China resist the Japanese invasion or for Western societies contributing markets, technology, and talent.
The CCP regime doesn't represent the Chinese people and has subjected them to brutal persecution since 1949, with more than 80 million Chinese losing their lives due to CCP persecution. The CCP's economic policies led to the 2001 crisis, and the Western world's aid prevented its rapid disintegration, transforming it into the world's second-largest economy. The CCP's grip on power and influence has since threatened global democracy and freedom.
The story of the farmer and the snake reflects the relationship between the CCP and Western democratic countries, where the snake is warmed and fed by the farmer but attacks the farmer when revived.
As stated in The Devil is Ruling Our World, whenever the anti-communist camp starts to encircle communist forces globally, the communist evil spirit tends to incite terrorist organizations, diverting attention from the primary battle against the world's most evil Communist Party and its operations to destroy humanity.
If the alliance of free and democratic countries led by the United States gets bogged down in counterterrorism due to conflicts like the Hamas-Israel and Russia-Ukraine wars, adopting appeasement strategies against the CCP, humanity may suffer untold pain and disaster. China Watch looks forward to your comments. That concludes this episode. If you like China Watch, please subscribe it and stay tuned. Thank you, everyone.